Well,
Okay. Boker Tov. A few days left before a celebration. Okay? Halavai, the war would stop, we'll celebrate. But I'm referring to the celebration of Lag BaOmer.
Where was it last night?
Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, I'd like to say a giant of Tzfat. We consider Miron a neighborhood of Tzfat. We're so close by. Because of the proximity of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai to Tzfat, that's one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, why so many great rabbis, of course the Mekubalim, the mystics, why they came to Tzfat hundreds of years ago. Even today, people come to Tzfat to be close to Miron. And Lag BaOmer, which is not mentioned, of course, in the Torah. Okay, it's a celebration. We call it, some of us call it a holiday. Maybe not the Chatam Sofer. He didn't call it a holiday. He said, a holiday? Of course not. But the Chassidim, many others, it's considered a holiday. Not only that we don't say Tachanun in the Tefillah, but it's an important day, and historians try to understand what's so important about this day. And I think if we delve into the sources, it's not because he passed away on Lag BaOmer. There's really no source, there's really no ancient source for that. It's his day of happiness or celebration, Yom Simchato. That's what it says by Rabbi Chaim Vital in the Kitvei of the Ari HaKadosh, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, said it's Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai's day of Simcha. Hilula, okay, like a marriage, and he was probably referring historically to the fact that he didn't pass away with the others. He wasn't killed. We didn't pass away with the other 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. He stayed on and was one of the main rabbis who kept going even after the Bar Kokhba rebellion and kept the Torah flowing. He was in the cave for 13 years, 12 years and another year with his son. And he came out, according to tradition, that's where they wrote the Zohar. Okay, maybe we'll have a few minutes to talk about where is that cave. But in any case, he's buried here in Miron. So we don't know the day of his Yortzeit, but many think that Lag BaOmer is also the day that he passed away. In any case, we know that when he passed away, there was a great light. A great light, but it doesn't say the exact date where he passed away. In any case, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai lived 1800 years ago. He lived in the second half of the 1st century CE and the first half of the 2nd century CE. A Talmud of Rabbi Akiva, mainly in the 2nd century. Rabbi Akiva already was older than him, of course. Rabbi Akiva was his great rabbi. Rabbi Akiva was put to death. Okay? After or in wake of the Bar Kokhba rebellion in Caesarea. Tradition says he's buried in Tveria. And Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai was in the generation after him, among other rabbis who were here in the Galilee with the other Jews that came up to Galilee from Judea in wake of the Bar Kokhba rebellion. Those are historic, well-known facts. And Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is found here in the Galil, in the Talmud, of course in the Zohar. And he's here, he walks around, he's traipsing around, he's teaching. He's making sure Jews don't live Israel, because it was a tough time. In tough times, some Jews pick up and leave. We're staying now in this war, we're here. But some some would rather leave. And that's what happened then also. And so we hear of stories of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai convincing or trying to convince the Jews of Galilee, let's stay put. Like in Tzfat, after the great earthquake in 1837, the average kept the Jews here in Tzfat. The same with Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. He was one of the leaders who kept the Jews here. In fact, there's a well-known story in the Midrash that took place in Meron, right next to us. That the people, he lived in Meron for part of his life. Sure. He also lived, we know about him in Tekoa Galilee. That's not Tekoa in Judea, but there was also Tekoa in Galilee. Okay, we argue about exactly where Tekoa is. It could be Pki'in, but it could be Chibit Shema near Meron. So Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai was a native of our area here. Okay? He may have visited Tzfat also, which was here during his time. It wasn't a big town, but it was here. They were here. During his time or after, there were Kohanim here in Tzfat and in Meron. We know, the Yochai family. So anyway, let's get back to the story. In Meron, a prominent Jew came back to Meron from Chutz La'aretz. He was outside, and he came with beautiful clothing from a department store. I don't know, maybe in Egypt, in Cairo. And the other people started looking. They were jealous of him. And some saying, let's go, in Chutz La'aretz, things are better. So he took the whole community of Meron to the top of the hill, where I think he took them to the Bet Knesset, to the ancient synagogue of Meron, which is the top of Meron. And he told everybody, look down, look to the valley. And all of a sudden, the trees started growing, and you could see gold coins on the trees. And Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai told everybody, what you want is money? That's what you want? Okay, you think it's better in Chutz La'aretz? You have your money here. You can be rich here also. But if you go down and pluck away the gold coins, you'll be plucking away probably at least part of your olam haba, of your rewards. We have to be good Jews here. We have to stay in Eretz Israel. He was a big Zionist, I would call him. Okay, he will stay, keep in Eretz Israel. And then Eretz Israel, the Jews in Eretz Israel, after the Bar Kokhba rebellion, were mainly here in the in Galilee. And in the Talmud, we hear a lot of sayings of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. I brought with me a beautiful article. It's not so well known. It's in English. It was written by Rabbi Professor Ben Zion Rosenfeld, a prominent historian of the time of the Talmud from Bar Ilan University. And he wrote already in 1999 an article on Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, wonder worker and magician. He delved in the sources of the Talmud before, without even discussing the Zohar. Okay, and he shows how throughout the Talmud, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai was already then considered a wonder worker, like the Ari HaKadosh. And we have a number of stories. I like to tell the story of he and his son after being 13 years in the cave. It was 12 years. They came out, but then Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai started seeing people not learning Torah, and he zapped them. And the angels, Hashem, got angry with him. That's why you left the cave. He sent them back for another year. Okay, this story is mentioned 7-8 times in different versions, Talmudic versions, in Masechet Shabbat, in the Midrashim, in the Yerushalmi. The historians say the Yerushalmi version is probably the more exact one. In none of the versions does it say exactly where the cave was. Some versions say Beka or Pekah, which we think Pki'in, but the Zohar itself mentions the desert of Lod. Sure, the desert of Lod, where the cave was, which is down in the middle of Eretz Israel, down below, and some even pinpoint a cave not far from Modi'in, not far from Gamzu, as the cave where maybe they hid out. That's according to the Zohar. But the most well-known tradition is the cave in Pki'in. Okay? A half hour from here. We can get there, but you can't go through the northern road. It's hard going there. You can't go through Sasa. You have to go around Carmiel and up best if you want to go there. And that's the famous cave of Rebbe Yochai and his son. After they came out, 13 years of being in the cave, they had to wash up, had to get clean. They went down to Tveria, to the hot springs of Tveria. Okay, Chamei Tveria. And they cleaned themselves up. And then they went to the people of Tveria and say, what can we do for you? You helped us so much. You welcomed us here in Tveria. And the people of Tveria didn't ask for gold coins or beautiful clothing or whatever. He asked the wonder worker, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, we have a problem. Wherever we dig in Tveria, we find graves. It's a problem for the Kohanim and for all of us. Okay, I was the archaeologist of Tveria for 26 years. Wherever I dug also, I used to find graves. And wherever they dig down below in Tveria, in the lower part of Tveria, lower part of New Tveria, you find graves even today. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai said, okay, I'll try to solve the problem. And there are different versions, but he took little hummus, how do you say hummus, the weed, the hummus plant, and little balls of hummus, and he threw them, and whenever they touched, that's where the bodies came out, and that's the famous story of the purification of Tveria by Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, and his son was with him also, Elazar. So he purified Tveria. Okay, so that's a wonder worker. The problem is that after Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, they continued burying the dead, so we still find many graves. I myself excavated a number. So Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai in the Talmud is a wonder worker, and however, Lag BaOmer only formed later on, in the Middle Ages. In fact, Meron wasn't only famous for hundreds of years in the Middle Ages. It wasn't only famous for Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. It was more well known because of Hillel and Shammai that were buried there, according to tradition. Rabbi Yochanan HaSandlar, Rabbi Tarfon, and others, okay, including characters from the Zohar are buried there. So we have a whole number of great sages buried in Meron, and among them, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. So if we go back 1,000 years, 900 years, 800 years, and we read the sayings, what the writings of the Olei Regel, the people who came to Eretz Israel to visit, and they go to Meron, they only mention Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai among the others. The first ones that are mentioned are Hillel and Shammai. They used to go there every year on the 14th of Iyar, Yudalid Iyar, which is, I think, Wednesday or Thursday.
Wednesday.
Okay? Now, Yudalid Iyar is the Hilulah of Rabbi Meir Bar Nanes in Tveria. We don't know his Yortzah. We don't know his date of death. They made it because it's 4 days before Lag BaOmer. So on the way up to Meron, they should stop in Tveria also. That's why Yudalit Nisan. It's also Pesach Sheni. But it was also the day they used to go to Meron to Hillel and Shammai.
But are the graves of Hillel and Shammai visible today?
Of course. The Hillel and Shammai, it doesn't say, there's no inscription saying, here is Hillel and here is Shammai. But the cave of Hillel is underneath the building, is below the building of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. You can go there. If the door is open, you walk in. You see one of the nicest archaeological finds, a beautiful burial cave, a beautiful, I like to say, I'm an archaeologist, I say a beautiful burial cave. For some people it may not be beautiful, but it's well carved. It has niches, and you can go in and understand by looking at it what a grave, what a burial cave looks like. You know, in Bava Batra, there's a whole Mishnah explaining how to build one. It explains that if you give money to a certain person and you, a proprietor, you bring him to make for you a cave, in the Bava Batra it says exactly how many niches he has to make if you give him the money to make it. Okay? And so we have there the cave, according to tradition, a tradition that's about 1,000 years old in writing. See, when we talk about traditions, we have to understand the traditions are written down, but there were probably oral traditions even before. So the first time we have written down this tradition is about 900 years ago. Hillel v'Shammai at Meron. Don't ask me how they got there, because they're not mentioned in Meron. They lived in Yerushalayim. First century BCE. If you go around down below, you can see there's a sign there. And it should be open. The last time I was there, it was open. So Hillel v'Shammai was there, and on the 14th day of Iyar, which is the day before Pesach Sheni, Tedvav, Yudalid Nisan, Pesach Sheni, the Jews of Galilee used to go there and used to pray for a good year, for rain, for a good agriculture. And even when the grandson of the Rambam, Rabbi David Hanagid, he came to Egypt to defend his grandfather's writings, the Moreh Nevuchim, right? The book of the perplexed, I think it's in English. He came to defend his grandfather. He went to that cave, and there he gave a whole speech cursing those who cursed his grandfather. I put a cherem on all those against his grandfather. You know, we talk about the Rambam. Not many know that after his time, in the generations after his time, some people didn't exactly agree or like what he wrote. It's hard to fathom. So Rabbi David Hanagid came and he went there to Meron, not to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He went to Ma'at, to the cave of Hillel and Shammai. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai becomes very super famous and much more, I guess, important in the 16th century. The Ari. The Ari didn't start like Ba'omer celebration. It was done before. It was done before by the Jews living here, by the Musar Rabim, by the Jews living here who never left Eretz Israel. And he accompanied them. He defended their minhagim, their customs. And that's when people more and more started going to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, sitting there learning Zohar. Another important aspect, another important thing to be mentioned is that during the 15th, 16th century, they started printing. And they started printing the Zohar. And so the Zohar could be easily read. It was probably not understood so much at the Aramaic, just like it's hard to understand today, the Zohar. But it was printed. And so people knew more people knew about it. And the mystics of Tzfat, the Mekubalim of Tzfat, started going and learning Zohar and Kabalah at Meron, Rabbi Lazar Zikri. It doesn't say only on Lag BaOmer they went. They went in other times of the year, sometimes for 2 weeks or so. They used to go to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Avraham Galanti, 17th century, late 60s, early 17th century, started building the building that we know today on top of Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai, and it became the most important site in Meron.
When is the first mention of the Zohar?
Huh?
When is the first mention of the Zohar? I know that the Ramak has a parish in the Zohar. When is the first mention of the Zohar itself?
Okay. I'm not an expert on Zohar. אני לא מקובל. I say, אני בקושי מקובל על אשתי.
But you're a historian.
Okay. Jewish tradition says that Rabbi Moshe di Leon rediscovered the Zohar in Spain. Okay, tradition says that it was buried in a cave in Meron. It was found, discovered. It went from hand to hand and reached Spain and rediscovered by Rabbi Moshe de Leon. This is the 13th century. But this is something that Jewish tradition maintains. And if you go to learn in Hebrew University, you may hear other thoughts about the Zohar. But the tradition says that the Zohar written by Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai, it's very Galilean. The Zohar talks, it describes the Galilee. Okay, many years ago, there was a book written by Professor Tishby, Mishnat Zohar, and there's a whole chapter on how the places of Galilee are mentioned there. Yes. So I don't know more to say about that. About Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai, the Zohar, the Ari, Kabalah, Rabbi Chaim Vital, Rabbi Elazar Zikri, they're connected to Meron, to the west of us, of course. Sefer Charedim, Rabbi Elazar Zikri. So I like to say he's the giant of Tzfat. I think I mentioned it once already. I'm going to say it again probably. I don't even remember. Maybe I think we mentioned it. But there was a big argument on the celebration of Lag BaOmer. Because already in the 16th century, the simple Jews, the Mustarabim, the locals who were here in Tzfat, some of them never left Eretz Israel ever. And I mentioned this before. We have some of these families here in Tzfat today. The Levi family, Eliyahu Levi. Okay, and some of them are here for years, for 2,000 years. They used to go to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai also and celebrate and dance and sing. And when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai started becoming more important, okay, so the Sfaradim came from Sfarad, the Zohar, and Kabalah. So they started going to Meron and they started celebrating. So who went? Men and women together went. So Rabbi Yosef Karo, our neighbor here behind the wall, clapped down on the stand and said, wait a minute, there are too many people going there together, mixed men and women. And the Beit Din sat and said, it's not so good, we shouldn't do it. And they gave a psak, they canceled the celebration of Lag BaOmer, not Lag BaOmer itself, they canceled the celebration together going there to on Lag BaOmer. Rabbi Chaim Vital heard this. Rabbi Chaim Vital tells his master, the Ari, that they canceled the celebration of Lag BaOmer. And the Ari got very angry. He said, Oy vavoy, if they do that, there's going to be a plague. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wants us to come. And so Rabbi Chaim Vital said, what can I do? Rabbi Yosef Karo, he's the head of the Beit Din. I don't even have smicha yet. Rabbi Chaim Vital got smicha from the Alshech only in the 1590s. I'm not even a rabbi, what can I do? You have to do something about it. And so the Ari said, they didn't invite me. So Rabbi Chaim Vital went to the Beit Din and he said, we want you to hear what the Ari has to say. So the Ari went to the Beit Din and he told them, you have to be very careful. He said it mildly. He didn't want to upset the Dayanim. Okay, he was a young guy. He was 37, 38 years old. Rabbi Yosef Karo was already in his 80s. And so he said, we have to go. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wants us to go. I tell in my stories, I say Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai came to the Ari and told him, tell them that I want to come. It doesn't say that. In the story that we have in a manuscript in Moscow, in the library, okay, this is a story from there. It says that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, that Yosef Karo said not to go. The Ari said, we have to go because he wants us to come. It doesn't say how he knew that. But Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, he wants us to come on that day. It's his day of simcha. It doesn't say that in the story. I'm quoting Rabbi Chaim Vital Shar Kavanot. It's his Yom Simchato, his day of celebration, because he didn't pass away. He was left alive, and he kept the Torah going. That's a reason for celebration. So the Ari told them, if we don't go, there's going to be a plague. And when he said that, okay, the Dayanim of Tzfat, they got scared. And they annulled the Gzera, they annulled the cancellation. And they said, okay. It doesn't say, they could have celebrated, they could have put a mechitza there. It doesn't say that. I'll say one more thing though. I remember it says in the story that the Ari adds something. He tells the Dayanim, when they go together, okay, I understand. But each person, he has to watch over for himself. Okay, there's no arivut. How do you say arivut in English?
Mixing.
What?
Mixing.
There's no arivut means arivut.
Responsibility.
Yafe. There's no responsibility that's public. In other words, each one is not responsible for the others. Each one should be by himself and watch over himself. The Ari was giving his opinion in Halacha also. He dared to give his opinion in Halacha at the Beit Din. And he said, in this case, each one is responsible for himself and not, and he was saying, we have to go, we have to do it. And they did it until today. We go to Meron. Not everybody. Okay, the Khatam Sofer in Hungary, 250 years ago, didn't like the idea of Lag BaOmer. It's a new holiday. It's not mentioned in the sources. Things are done there that he didn't like. Burning clothing, burning cloths. He didn't like that. And he's influenced people until today. People say, don't go. Okay, many of the Lita'im, Khatam Sofer. They're not against Lag BaOmer, they're against going there and doing things on that day. And even if it's his Yortzeit, it's not a day of celebration. So we still have this argument, but people go today. That's a little bit about Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Certainly one of the giants. Yes, of Tzfat. If anybody finds an historical source of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai's time that he's mentioned in Tzfat, I'd like to know. But we know he lived in Meron, he was all over the Galil, he lived in Tzipori, he lived in Pki'in, and he's certainly one of the giants of Tzfat.
The minhag of doing Chalakah.
That's the Ari.
That's the Ari.
He brought his son from Egypt. And although the Chalakah, I think, is known before, the first Chalakah we know about is the son of the Ari. Was he 3 years old or not? I don't know. But that we know. That's his minhag. Okay.